Welcome to How to Be a Person, a podcast about life with me, your host, Giuliano Grimaudo. All right, Larry, what's going on, my friend?
Something exciting like your rest of your life is.
Thank you so much for joining me. Obviously, like if anyone's listening to this podcast for any length of time, they know I don't know my guests. I haven't talked to you very much before. Like we literally talk for like 2 or 3 minutes before we jump on just to go over some basic stuff. And so I don't know anything about you. I just know a little bit. So if you could share some stuff about yourself, and so for me and anyone listening, and then we kind of can just go from there.
Well, we probably have to start with I don't like to talk about myself. That's
Okay, well, then just a few seconds of tell me something.
okay. So the reason I have a story at all is because I married a really tough, rough woman.
Okay.
She was a really hard-natured woman, and so I stayed married to her for 40 years. But in that the front part of the story is in the 70s, I married her.
Mm-hmm.
And I married her because I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything at all. I didn't know anything about people. I didn't know anything about people's natures. I didn't know anything about how people were raised, nothing.
Sure.
So I got into that marriage with no knowledge at all. And when I literally woke up and realized, oh, we're married, and what's happening? We're fighting. What's the very start of this? We're fighting. Why are we fighting? Yeah. So we're fighting because she has a very hard nature, because she was raised by hard people, and I was raised by very soft people.
Okay.
So my mother was an alcoholic. My father was a gambler. Very, very soft, easygoing people, and they were entertainers. And so not only were they entertainers, they had these two problems that they lived with, and they didn't let their kids get in the way. And so I kind of had to raise myself. So as a person raising myself, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything because they didn't teach anything, so I couldn't know anything, right?
Okay.
So I had to find out, like, why are we fighting, and what are we going to do about it? And so in the beginning, I've started to realize that, and I just actually didn't know this for years later, that I was built and designed from childhood to stay married and miserable. So my parents stayed married and miserable. Her parents stayed married and miserable. We both came in with a package inside our subconscious that said, stay married and miserable. That's how you live, right? So because we had these messages, we have to stay married and miserable, we couldn't leave. She couldn't leave, I couldn't leave. And it's like, okay, it's the 70s, it's the age of divorce, so what? It doesn't matter, because our parents said this is what we got to do, stay married and miserable. So the whole idea of leaving was just like I wouldn't even thought of that. I couldn't think of it. And
like it wasn't an option.
No, there was no door, right? So since there was no door out, I had to decide that I was going to learn something. I was going to be what I called the learner. And so as I became the learner and became more serious about learning, she's not the learner. She is a teacher. And she's a teacher, and she's a very hard teacher. And she's hard because she's so angry. And why is she angry? She's angry because she grows up in an angry family. It's a family.
She's not Italian, is she?
No, she's not. No, she's close. She's German, right?
Sure. Oh, okay, yeah.
So she's angry because that's what the parents did. They threw things at each other, and that anger was her normal way. Well, my normal way was shutting down. That's the way I lived, shut down, because that's what they did.
Okay.
So I saw what they did, she saw what they did, and so each of us are coming with this whole thing. So the whole thing just was unknown to me. It was a complete mystery. Well, years later, she ended up calling this your invisible lifestyle. And so your invisible lifestyle, is I teach that now, right? That's part of my course, the invisible lifestyle. Why is it invisible? Because you cannot see it. You cannot see what's put into you. You can't see what's built in there. You can't see it. That's because why? Because it's called the subconscious mind.
Sure.
Well, what is the subconscious mind? Well, there's no way to know it. We can't photograph it. There's no way to see it. So there's no way to know any of that stuff. So what I like to describe is the subconscious is like a big vat, a huge vat that's all the messages, 15,000 hours. So waking years, birth to 10 years old, that's the time when all this comes in. It comes in without a filter. There's no argument. There's no debate. It all comes in. And so that vat is what's in our subconscious mind. And so above our subconscious mind is our conscious mind. Now, what does that look like? It looks like a small glass jar. That's about the comparison. A huge vat in the bottom, a small glass jar at the top.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So what we're very proud of our subconscious, our conscious minds. We really like them. We do because how do I tell you about my personality? How do I tell you about what I like, about my experiences? It's all conscious mind stuff, right? So we love that and we believe in it so much. But the subconscious is what all this stuff is coming up from. It comes into the conscious, and the conscious now kind of discovers like, well, what do I do with this? Like, I don't like it, right? And so this is remember, this is a 40-year marriage, by the way.
Sure.
Okay? She lives that's all she lives. She lives 40 years before she died. And so when finally it was over, everything I had to learn was learned. Okay. And the reason I had to learn it is because I had to build a course. And what was the course? It was the course I taught myself. All the things, all the ideas in the course are, what did I need? What did I need to know? And so what I did is I spent like hours and hours writing on Lego pads. Why was I doing that? Because if I didn't write it down, it didn't stay still. And if it didn't stay still, thought is electric. It just it comes and goes. You can't hold on to it. But if you write it down, then it stays there. And then you can come back and look at it again. And you can come back days later and think about it again. And so that ability to steady my thinking is what actually made me stay and want to learn. And so I became better student. And so what she was becoming is what I call the pain provider. Right? The pain provider is a person who provides your pain and makes it possible for you to be motivated enough to learn, motivated enough to keep on going. Right?
Yeah.
So my job was to learn. Her job was to provide pain. And as long as we stayed in that setting, I kept learning, and she kept creating the pain. And so if she stopped the pain, if she suddenly oh, I've been too hard on you. I'm really sorry. If that ever happened, it never happened, by the way. It never happened. She never said she was sorry. She never apologized. None of that ever happened. Yeah. Right? And so why? It had to be that way because I needed a pain provider to keep on delivering the pain that caused me to keep on learning. And so now here I am in the course. I'm teaching this course. And the course is called Environment Changer. That's what it's called. And the reason it's called that is because that's how I saw it. I saw it as the changing of the environment of your mind, right? And what does that happen? That happens when you're in an environment of pain. Because if you're too happy, if you're too comfortable, all learning stops. You can't learn. There's no way you can learn at Disneyland, right? You can't learn. So I had to keep on going, and I had to keep staying because that was my learning opportunity. And every time something would happen, some meanness, some criticism, some blame, some fault finding, some judgment, name the terrible things, right? Yeah. That stuff kept me going because I kept learning from it. And as I kept learning from it, I kept creating tools. And so tools are, what is it? What's a tool? It's not like a screwdriver. It's an idea. And when you have an idea, you have a tool. Because when you have the idea of, one of the things I teach is called the life's greatest memory. And so where did I come up with that? I came up with it because I didn't have a happy childhood, right? My parents were not into me, right? They were not thinking like, boy, you're the greatest thing in the world, right? And so I was the third kid, the youngest. And so I had a great memory. And the great memory was something I could barely remember. But it was the moment I was really happy. And when was that? It was the moment when my mother was in the kitchen and she was baking something because company was coming over. Because this was a kind of a place upstairs from grandma's, right? So she has a cook. Other people came over, all the family came over, and then she would cook. So she's cooking and she's making gingerbread cookies. Now, how old am I? This might have been 1951, and I was like in a high chair, and there's a little thing, right? So what I can see, I see my hands slapping the high chair the table because I'm really excited. And the reason is because she holds this gingerbread cookie tray and shows it to me, right? Now, this is a real early memory. Yeah. But phenomenal emotion. It's like fantastic
Wow.
feelings, right?
I can't
So
remember
this,
anything that far back, even close.
well, this is just a lucky break, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So I have that, and I think, wow, I was so excited about a cookie. I was so excited about my mother showing me the cookie, my
Okay.
mother promising that I'm going to get the cookie. All of the conditions were right, right? And so this is like a moment in time.
Hmm.
I'm born in October, right? And so this is like maybe my second birthday or something.
Yeah.
And so I'm seeing this moment where she holds up these gingerbread cookies, and you're going to get me one of these cookies. It was also a mother-son moment,
Sure.
right? I needed that bonding moment. I didn't have many of those. They were very rare because my mother drank. She was an alcoholic, and she
Mm.
drank a lot, and she drank because she had to get rid of her childhood pain. And drinking is how she did. She was self-medicating. So this is the 50s. The 50s are pretty crude and how people actually learned and knew things. And
Okay.
so in that moment, I was in bonding with my mother, and I was just thrilled and happy. And that happiness still stays with me this moment. I can still feel it. All I have to do is go back to the moment and remember it. And I
Okay.
call it the life's greatest memory. And so I started to teach that to people. And so they started to come up with the life's greatest memory. And so there's a format to it. And the format is, what is the story? And then what is the meaning? And when you get the story and the meaning, then you can tell it as a capsule story that
Okay.
tells you, this is how I felt. And when you tell that story about how you felt, you start getting really happy. And now all that moment starts to come back to you, and it starts to like flood you like, wow, that's what it really meant. That moment meant this, and it felt like this. It moment happened, it felt like it meant this, and it felt like that. And when you put those things together, you start feeling it and feeling it and feeling it, and that starts to make you very, very happy. So that was an example of a tool,
Hmm.
right? Why was it a tool? Because it has like a format of, well, here's what you do. One of the tools I did develop years later is called Get Out of the Ocean. And the reason it's called Get Out of the Ocean is because I drew a picture. By the way, I will show you the picture.
Okay.
Right? There's the picture. Right?
Okay.
This side's the ocean, that side's the beach. Okay?
Okay.
The ocean and the beach. So the ocean is full of sharks. And the reason it's full of sharks is because it's full of against energy. And so if a shark bites you, it bites you and fills you with against energy. And so that is the being in the ocean. And when you're
What
in
kind
the
of energy
ocean,
you said?
against energy.
Against energy.
Against
Okay.
energy, yeah. So that's the ocean is full of sharks, and so sharks are always biting you, and they're always out swimming you, and they're always making you feel like lost and hopeless and all these terrible things. So our job is to get out of the ocean and onto the beach. So what do we know about the beach? The beach is a peaceful place. It's a calm place. It's a happy place. It's got trees. It's got sand, right? And so just the image of leaving the ocean and come to the safety of the beach is a form of relief. You start to feel like, oh, that feels so good, right? Because all our images of the beach are wonderful, right? Well, we love the land. We love the beach. We dream about the beach.
Okay.
We love everything about it, right?
Yeah.
So when we get onto the beach, we're starting to feel secure. So how do you get out of the ocean? You get out of the ocean in 4 steps. And I want to go over these 4 steps because when people start to hear this, they think, I wanted to get out of the ocean because I felt like I was terribly in the ocean. I don't want the sharks. I don't want the sharks biting me, right? So what are the 4 steps of getting out of the ocean? So the first one is acceptance. So this is step 1. Step 1 says, I accept that blank is rejecting me. Okay, why do I say that blank? Because that's the person who's tormenting you, the person who's causing you pain. I accept that Steve is rejecting me. I accept that Carla is rejecting me. Right? So all these people that you perceive as doing this to you, you start with that statement. I accept that she's or he is rejecting me. The second statement is gratitude. And gratitude says, I have gratitude that blank is rejecting me because. And the next statement is, I learn from pain, and this is the pain that teaches me. Okay, so now the first statement, I have made acceptance. The second statement, I have gratitude. Gratitude for what? This is the pain that teaches me. Well, that's a brand new thought. Nobody's thinking this is the pain that teaches me. Nobody even likes that idea. They think, I hate pain, I hate pain, I'm against it, right?
Mm.
So this second step is gratitude, and that leads to the third step, which is appreciation. Now, appreciation says, what do I love about you? And this is the name, blank space again, right? So in Marcia's case, I accept that Marcia is rejecting me. That's the first statement. The second statement, I have gratitude. Marcia is rejecting me because I learned from pain, and this is the pain that teaches me. And the third step is what do I love about you, Marcia, right? So when I get to this third step, I'm now in a different emotional place because I've made these three steps, and now I've got to ask, well, what do I love about you? Oh, I know what I hate about you, but I'm not going to do that now. I know what do I love about you. And so now I'm going to talk about what do I love about you, and I have to invent something. I have to come up with an idea. What do I love about you? So when you start to ask this person, right? This is in your mind now. This is not out there in the world. This is in your mind. What do I love about you? And now you have to start thinking favorably about that person. You have to start thinking kindly about that person because you're going to answer the question, what do I love about you? Right? Because nobody does that. It's just not, it's completely unnatural, right? And then the fourth step is really the big step because the sharks that are always generating against energy don't want this step to happen. This is called quantum forgiveness. So quantum forgiveness is a statement that if you didn't write it down, you wouldn't remember it, right?
Okay.
So you really have to write it down. So quantum forgiveness is we are good, pure and innocent, all is forgiven and released. That's quantum forgiveness. All right. When you say we are good, pure and innocent, all is forgiven and released, you just said, what do I love about you? What do I love about you? Oh, gee, I guess I do know. And so now I come to step 4, quantum forgiveness. We are good, pure and innocent, all is forgiven and released. When you do that, it's like completes this whole circuit.
Okay.
Acceptance, gratitude, appreciation, quantum forgiveness. And now when you put it all together, now it's a whole thing that moves you out of the ocean and puts you on the ground. And now the sharks can't follow you. The sharks can't come to where the beach is. And that's the thing we all know. We all know sharks can't follow us, right? Because sharks are kind of out of the business on the beach. They don't know what they're going to do. So what the job is we are good, pure and innocent, all is forgiven and released. It does something to you. It does something that's kind of profound because it puts you in a place where you're now like deeply caught up in the ugliness and the against energy of your life. You're really now, those 4 steps really did take you out of the ocean, and they did put you on the beach. And now you're starting to feel like, oh, yeah, I feel a whole lot better here, right? So now that you're here, now that you're on the beach, now you got to find out if you're in dupe or cars. Because this is the ability to stay on the beach is to find out if you're in dupe energy or if you're in cars energy. So these are 2 acronyms. So let's start with dupe. Dupe is disturbed, urgent, pressed, and edgy. Now this is very shark-like. Disturbed, urgent, pressed, and edgy, right? What happens to people when they're upset? They're disturbed. They get urgent. They feel pressed. They feel edgy, nervous, right? They're reactive. They're just very unsettled. Right? Those are the first signs of you losing and going back into the water, because you're actually gonna start falling apart. So in order to do that, you got to find out, well, what is CARS? Well, CARS is the other acronym. CARS stands for calm, all is well, reassured, and suddenly know. Calm, all is well, reassured, and suddenly know. What is that? That is CARS. I am calm, I believe all is well, I'm reassured, and I suddenly know things. I suddenly know, like a revelation. I suddenly, I realize this, right? And so now I take dupe and cars, disturbed, urgent, pressed, and edgy, calm, all is well, reassured, and suddenly know. These 2 collections of these acronyms are really huge because they're so far apart. Because the whole idea of dupe is to be completely lost. You're going to fall into fear. You're going to fall into all kinds of terrible places. But when you feel calm, when you feel reassured, when you know all is well, you're now like you're just in a better place. And so what I ask is, are you more dupe or you're more cars? Are you more dupe or are you more cars? Like, I feel more dupe. No, No, I think I now that I know what stupid cars is, I think I feel more cars, right? Well, what is that? It's like the guarantee that you're going to stay on the beach.
Mm.
You're going to stay on the beach because you're not falling into the water and get drowned by the surf. You're not being pulled back by the riptide, right? So all those analogies we use with the ocean,
Yeah. Is
right?
this like just to be clear, so this exercise that you're talking about getting out of the ocean, is this like an example of something like when someone's having issues in their marriage, this is like an exercise for them to go through? Is that what you're
This
saying?
is exactly what this is intended for.
Okay.
It's because in marriage, lots of difficult things happen, lots of difficult, hard, struggling things, and so this is a way to get out of the ocean of the against energy that you live in.
Mm. Yeah.
And you've lived that way all your life. You live that way.
Yeah.
Maybe your parents lived that way. So you don't know anything about it. So what
Mm.
I'm teaching is I'm teaching the analogy of get out of the ocean.
Yeah.
And these
Yeah.
4 steps get you out of the ocean. And when does it happen? When your person you thought you loved did something terrible, or
Mm.
cheated on you, or betrayed you, or lied to you, or all these things that they do,
Yeah.
right? And so this is your time to literally free yourself from the ocean and get onto the beach and stay
I
there.
see. I see.
And so
You
that's
know,
what's
something
important.
that you said earlier that kind of stood out to me that I wanted to ask for clarification on, because what you said was that like you were the learner and that your wife is the teacher, right?
Yeah,
And you were
she's
like,
yeah, yes,
you're right.
well, I call them the non-learner. She's the
The
non-learner.
non-learner.
Uh,
Okay, wait. So are you, so just to be clear here, I'm trying to understand. Are you saying that these are like this is like the typical of any marriage, or you're saying like in your specific situation those were the roles that you guys
First
played?
of all, it was my situation. Okay,
Okay.
so I have a scale from 10 to 0,
Okay.
and the scale of 10 to 0 is how I qualify whether a person is a chaos kid or a purpose kid. So a purpose kid is the best place to grow up. A chaos kid is the worst place to grow up. And so now
Mm.
I've got to find out, is a person a purpose kid or are they a chaos kid? And so the scale, you have to understand what the scale is. So 10, 9, 8, that's purpose. Parents love you and they love each other. That's a great place to grow up. Because when you have that, you get purpose. You get the values of honesty and commitment and loyalty, and you know
Hmm.
what all those things look like because you've seen
Okay.
them, right? And so when you grow up 10, 9, 8, you're a purpose kid. 7, 6, 5 is the twilight zone. It's called the twilight zone because that's where you're really like in a weird place, because that's where your parents don't raise you. The reason they don't raise you is because they're just too busy living their own lives, right? And there's all kinds of versions of this, of parents who don't really raise you. And so that's the twilight zone. Then 5 to 0 is the chaos world. And so
Mm.
chaos is, depending where you're 5 or where you're 0, is going to be
Okay.
whether you're abandoned, whether you're abused, or whether you're neglected. And
Okay.
so abandonment, abuse, and neglect are what qualifies for the chaos world.
Okay.
So when you have those energies and you're treated that way, you got troubles. You got lots of troubles. You got mental troubles. You got money troubles. You got health troubles. You got all kinds of things happening to you because the stuff that you have in your subconscious is chaos.
Mm.
It's abandonment. It's abuse. It's neglect. It's emotional. It's physical.
Yeah.
It's all down there. You're carrying around with you every time you go to a new relationship. You're carrying it with you, and so you don't know that. Right? So you're a
And so
chaos
how does
kid.
that scale then tie into what you're talking about with the roles of the teacher versus the learner,
Okay,
or learner versus
so
non-learner?
so the learner, what's the learner doing? The learner is trying to learn, how do I do something like get out of the ocean? How do I
Okay.
learn that? Well,
Okay.
I have to learn it in pressure. I have to learn it in difficulty. I have to learn it in unfairness. I have to learn it being judged. I have to learn it being criticized. I have to learn it under that kind of heat. Otherwise, I can't learn it because there's not even anything to hold on to if I don't really feel the pain. And so I feel the pain, I get out of the ocean. And what is that doing? That's causing me to secure myself as a chaos kid. So if I was raised
Mm.
at like a 2, or some people like a 0,
Hmm.
uh, they've been abandoned, they've been abused, they've been neglected. Some stories I've been hearing stories for 15 years from thousands of people. And these are horrible stories. But they're people growing up in these really terrible places. And some of them don't have any determination and resolve. They just don't have it in them. And they've got nothing to hold on to. So teaching a thing like this, getting out of the ocean, is very valuable to them because it's a tool.
Yeah.
That's a tool, right? And so I've done this for years. I draw my pictures of all these ideas because I want people to hold on to the idea so they can remember it, like
Mm,
the greatest memory, right? How
sure.
do you remember the greatest memory, right? But all those things are when you apply them and you're under pressure, you really learn. Amazing how it happens.
Yeah.
Amazing how people, when they really learn under pressure, it's really, they really hold it now.
Yeah.
It's sticking now.
Yeah, what I want to like just fully understand is when you were talking about the roles, right? What you said was like I had to, right? Like I had to be in this situation in order for this to happen. What I'm curious of is, are you saying that like I think the word you said was I was supposed to, right? Like I was
Yes.
supposed to do like to be in this situation. What I'm wondering is, are you saying that like it was predetermined for you, like supposed to, in by who, right? Like who decided that that's what it's supposed to be?
So what happens for us? There's people who, what's the phrase? The phrase is, it was meant to be. You heard that phrase, right?
Okay,
It
yeah,
was meant to be. Why do people say that? Why do they, oh, it was meant to be? The reason they say that is because they want there to be a God in their life.
okay,
They want that God to be here and mend things. This is meant to be this way. This is meant to, that's how they think.
okay,
And so when they say it was meant to be, like, oh, that was meant to be, right? Like some greater force meant it to be, right?
okay,
And so Hollywood has latched on to the idea, and they call it the universe, right?
okay,
And so when they do in movies, oh, the universe doesn't want this to happen, right? The universe wants this to
okay,
happen, right? And so they say that, but really what happens is the way you're raised in childhood is giving you all the instructions that God would give you.
okay,
That whatever you call God is, that's your parents. Your parents are God because you have no idea of what's here. You just don't know. Now, some people, they just come into a family and they feel like they're odd ducks. They feel like they don't belong. They feel like they're the odd man out of the family. And those people just have an awareness about them that says, I always knew that I was different, right? And so when those people know that they were different, they have the sense that God doesn't determine this. I determine it, right?
okay,
But what really determines, the childhood determines, the instructions from mom and dad tell you. And so what do you get? Well, there's a version of this where the mother is one way and the father's another way. Okay.
okay,
And the father is very open and free and relaxed, and right, the mother's very judgmental, very religious, very hard, very severe. When you're raised in that, you're raised in two places on the scale. And so
mm,
now I just can't put you in one place in it. Now I have to find out, like, well, tell me about your father. What was he like? Well, he is this free, open, casual, supportive, loving, right, wonderful guy. And tell me about your mother. Oh, she was horrendous, right? And terrible tale of the mother, right?
mm-hmm,
uh, Religious, judgmental, hard, right? Blaming, fault finding, manipulative, right? All the words you can imagine, right? So now you're raised in two spots on the scale. You're raised at a 1 from your mother, and you're raised at a 9 from your father. So you're a 1-9. You're literally in two places. Now, how could you live in two places at once? It's easy. You literally bounce back and forth.
mm,
Sometimes you're like your mother, and sometimes you're like your father. Now, what's the pattern? The pattern is I'm like my dad most of the time, but when I get in a difficult situation with a difficult person, I become like my mother,
mm,
right?
okay, yeah, that's
And,
interesting.
and so that's like a switch person. And every
Yeah,
once in a while, I literally find people that are like 1s, 9s,
mm,
or 8 2s, or whatever they are, right?
yeah, like given the situation, it can, yeah, okay, that's interesting.
Because
That's interesting.
that's actually what, when we talk about meant to be, it's the parents that mean it to be, the way they meant it.
Mm,
That's the way it is.
yeah,
And there's
yeah,
some parents that are pretty mean spirited. They really kind of give you a really dark place to live. And so when it's really mean spirited, you really go down on the scale real far. And
yeah,
so I ask the question: if somebody brings you down, who brought you up? Who brought you up the scale? Who could lift you? A grandmother, a grandfather, an aunt, a cousin, somebody who lifted you up and built you up and made your life matter. And they think, well, God, that would be my uncle, right? And then they give the hero story, right?
mm,
And then I started to find out, well, how much influence was the uncle? Well, I didn't see him very often, but when I saw him, boy, he was really good. He made me feel really good, right? So we got a parent who's making you be a 0 or a 1 or a 2 on the scale. But then an uncle comes in and lifts you up from a 1 to a 4. And so now that person, if we establish that the person really did make a difference, now you're a 4 because that's where you were raised. So all the inputs, that's what I'm looking for. When I put people on the scale, I'm looking for what are all the influences that put you in the location you're at.
Okay.
So when you become an environment changer, a person who changes the environment of their mind, you don't have to stay in the place you were raised. Because if you stay in the place where you're raised, you literally hold all the ideas in your subconscious and you try to never change them. You just let the idea comes and chases you, pummels you, throws you in the ocean, and just makes you suffer, right? And you don't want to do anything about that. You just want to let it be, just stay that way. And people who don't want to change, they're people who don't want to change the environment of their mind at all. And because they don't want to, they're not even like aware that they need to.
Well, kind of like what you were saying before, where like you just had accepted that marriage is, you just together and miserable. That's just, you're miserable together. Right. That's it. Like you said, if you don't question it, then you just continue to operate under that.
That's right. But I wanted to learn. And so I became a learner because I had a pain provider, and that pain provider was phenomenal. She was really, really good. Yeah. Not good in a wonderful way as a wonderful person. This was a person who was dedicated and determined to stay mean under all circumstances.
Yeah.
In fact, that meanness actually killed her because she got cancer and died. Yes. And when you learn about what people get cancer from, it's a lot of this like negativity that people bury. They bury it and they don't talk about it. And they don't get help and all that. And so that's what happens.
Yeah. You know what I'm curious of is because what you said was that when you, right, when you guys got married, like you said, it was in like the 70s and you just, right, there was no like divorce wasn't an option. I'm curious. I mean, I feel like I can gather based on what you said, but I'm curious, do you feel like knowing what you know now that you would have made a different decision back then? Or do you feel like that was the best decision for you, was to stay together?
Well, when you ask people the question about history and past and present, everybody who has a much better attitude about their life is they all say, I would never change a thing.
Yeah.
Now, why do they say I would never change a thing? They all say that too. No matter who they are.
Yeah.
Oh, I would never change a thing.
Yeah.
Why? Because that made me what I am.
Yeah.
Without all those variables, I would not be who I am. I'd be something different, right? And so they suddenly realized, like, wow, all that was very confusing and it was very horrendous and very painful at the time, but I would not be who I am if it wasn't.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's
so
what I knew.
I guess the question is more of, I guess I'm asking it in more of the sense of like, let's say someone is in that situation, right? Is it what you're essentially teaching, if I understand correctly, is that, like it almost doesn't matter who your spouse is, that like your happiness in a marriage is your responsibility. Is that correct?
Okay. So yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the short answer is yes, right? It's your happiness is your responsibility. But what does it mean? What does it mean your happiness is your responsibility? The reason I've been doing this for 15 years, getting people to locate where they are on the scale. If a person talks to me about their present life, a man or a woman, they talk about their present life. They talk about their situation and this situation, and they're buried in their situations. Mm-hmm. And I say, I don't want to know all of it. I want to know the source code. I want to know the origin story. I want to know what got you here, and what you're living on today. That's what I want to know. I want to know what you're living on because I want to know what the subconscious content is, because that's what's showing up in the little jar and telling you what to do. So people don't want to know about childhood. They don't. They don't want to know about it. And the reason they don't is because what's the most insulting thing a man or a woman could hear from their spouse? You're just like your mother. You're just like your father. They hate that. They hate that with all their mind, right? But this is rare. You're just like your father. Well, a person who's just like their father and they love it, they're complimented, they're flattered. Mm-hmm. What is that? That's somebody who's raised at 10.
Mm.
That's a purpose home. You're
Yeah.
just like your father. My God, if I could just be like my father, right? They would love that, right? But the
Mhm.
people who hate you're just like your father are hating that the chaos father that they had was something they want to separate from. They want to put the huge distance between them and their chaos father. And so that's why I need to know about whether you had a chaos mother and a chaos father.
Mm.
Because if I don't know that, I don't know anything. I don't know what are you doing here? Like, where are you on the scale, right?
Yeah.
But if I know I'm talking to a zero, I have no questions. I have no questions because I know what a zero is going to do. A
Yeah.
zero is going to lose jobs. A zero is going to take drugs. A zero is going to smoke. A zero is going to drink. A zero is going to be a pleaser. Or a
Mhm.
zero, right? I know all the things that the zeros do. The
Yeah.
zeros have to do the things that chaos requires because that's what chaos requires. It demands that you live in chaos. What are our prisons full of? Our prisons are full of people who are chaos kids.
Mm.
That's what the prison system doesn't know anything about that. They don't think about that at all. But that's what all of it is. It's just
Yeah.
chaos.
So do you believe that for most people, if they're unhappy in their marriage, that like you don't like you're not a proponent of someone getting divorced if they feel like that's the right decision for them?
So now we're talking about running away. Okay.
Okay.
What do people do? What do all the people who give advice? Friends, family, coworkers. What do they give advice? They have one kind of advice. The advice is get out. Get out, leave, go away. Hey, if you're suffering, if you're unhappy, somebody makes you unhappy, who cares what it is? Get out. That's our advice. We all speak for the whole world. Get out. Why? Because we don't like pain. We don't like pain. And we run away from pain. And we think you should do the same thing. You should run away from pain. Because you're not pain provider. That's the most ridiculous idea in the world. Nobody should be providing pain. That's terrible. Right? Why? Because the world hates pain. They hate it and they don't want it. So what I'm teaching is it takes one to heal a marriage. Why does it take one person? How could one person? The world never teaches that. The world says if you got somebody who's unhappy, you get out. Because they all give the same advice, right? And so my friends tell me I should get out. My friends tell me leave her. My friends are, right? Of course they're going to tell you that because they don't love that person you married. They love you and they want you to not suffer. And that's what they're doing, protecting you from suffering.
So do you feel like there isn't a scenario where that decision makes sense then? Like for someone to get divorced?
Well, let's before we get into that question, we have to identify the police. So when does the police show up at a house? The police show up at a house when you get physical,
Okay.
right? Because you imagine the police call the police. Yeah, my husband, he's beating me up emotionally, right?
Okay.
Sorry, man. When your husband hits you, let us know.
Okay.
Because we don't come for emotional abuse. We come for physical abuse. That's
Okay.
the dividing line, right? So when you're being physically abused, you have to leave. That's what shelters are for.
Okay.
Shelters are for getting away, right? And so, I know in this marriage with Marcia, this was a pretty violent marriage, right? But I couldn't leave because I had the program saying not to leave, right?
Okay.
But when you're being beat up, it's not a great learning environment when you're being beaten up, right?
Physically.
Physically, right?
Okay.
When the police are called, that's the line, right? But when you're being emotionally beaten up, that's where your learning can really take place. When you're being emotionally beaten up, but the police won't come for you when you're being emotionally beaten up. When you're emotionally being put down, criticized, and blamed, you're not going to have the police show up, right? Because they don't want to talk to you. They only want to be there for your physical safety. So there's that dividing line. Do you ever give advice somebody should leave? Yes, I do. Right? If you're in a physical place where you're being physically violated, you have to. The police require it. The courts require it. You have to get out. You have to. Right? But most people's lives with marriages are not physical. They're not physical. Most of them don't. They become physical when they're pushed, but they're really not that way. So most of the abandonment, the abuse, the neglect, it's emotional. It's emotional abandonment. It's emotional abuse. It's emotional criticism, blame. In other words, all the things you were treated at in your childhood, your chaos childhood, if you're raised down in that 5, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, if you're raised down there, that's the place where you almost like you kind of expect it and you hate it. I expect somebody to treat me that way, and I hate somebody to treat me like that way, right? So I want to get out, but I also want to learn.
Yeah.
So if I cross that line, that physical line, when the police say get out, I get out. When the court says get out, I get out, right? But
So
if I,
I
if I
think my only question about this though is like, so okay, for example, the physical aspect of it, right? When it's like, okay, if someone's physically hurting me, I gotta go. So like, because it's a priority, right? Like I cannot be like, I need to protect myself physically.
Mhm.
In my mind, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, but shouldn't someone have that same level of boundary for their emotions as well? Like, okay, yeah, someone's hurting me physically. I'm not putting up with that. Like I have a boundary. No one else is going to hurt me physically. I'm out of here. Is it not? It feels like the same thing. I just have the same boundary. No one's going to hurt me emotionally without my permission. I'm out. It feels like
well,
the same thing to me. Like you're just simply protecting yourself. Do you disagree? I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm exploring what your perspective is on it.
so remember, so the story I'm telling is a story that I was in a verbally abusive marriage,
Okay.
right? Why did I stay in a verbally abusive marriage?
Yeah.
Because in a verbally abusive marriage, I have the pain motivation to learn. And I learn things when that pressure is on. When the pressure is on, the learning sticks. The
See, okay,
pressure is
I
not
don't
on.
disagree like completely. I do believe like because I've been through a lot, right? You don't know
Right,
because we haven't talked before, but
right,
I've had really high highs and really low lows, and I've been through a
right.
lot. And I do agree that there's definitely learning to be had in the lows, but I also feel like I learn every single day right now, and I feel like I'm on a high. And
Okay.
so for me, in like, I guess my perspective is like, I don't feel like you have to be in pain in order to learn. And also like, even if you like your priority is to learn, it feels like you could do that with someone who isn't going to make you feel like crap every day. I don't know. It's like, okay, so, but I think really what it comes down to is that like, let's say you're choosing a partner, right? If you're choosing someone before you get married, and that person is verbally abusive, like you're not going to go into that relationship. You're like, oh, perfect. This person's going to cause me pain. So I get to learn. Now I'm going to marry them. And you're like, no, I didn't say yes yet. I'm gone. Right. Like I'm going to find someone else. But like once you've said yes, like once you're in the marriage, now that's like, oh no, now I got to stay because I said I was going to. Is it?
Well,
Am I? What I'm asking you though is your perspective. If someone is not married yet, and that person is verbally abusive to them, and they're making that decision, like, wouldn't you give the advice to that person not to get married to them if they asked you?
well, when we're talking about marriage before, if that person's abusive before,
Okay.
that's like a really early warning sign that,
Okay.
oh, this is not going well. This is
Okay.
not somebody I should stay with, right?
Okay.
Because when you're not married, you're literally free to do anything you want, and
Sure.
that, right? But there have been people who have they have this emotional need, the childhood need, to dish out. Because you remember how when the people meet, they fall in love and they act really well,
Yeah.
right? They don't show their true subconscious mind, right?
Sure. Sure.
And that doesn't come until after the marriage, and then the real thing comes out, right? Okay, so you fooled me. You told me that you were wonderful, delightful, and loving and kind, right? You told me all these wonderful things, right? You showed me all these wonderful things, and now you changed it all. Well, now I got to undo the marriage. I got to undo through the court. I got to do all this. Like, what a lot of trouble this is, right? Uh, so, uh, you know, people before marriage aren't real smart. Why are they really smart? Because they're in love. Well, why are they not? Why is like smart and love done? That doesn't even line up with each other. Why? Because when you're in love, all kinds of things are being distorted.
Okay.
Endorphins, oxytocin, dopamine. These are things are called they call them the love drugs, right?
Yeah.
So when you're under the influence of these things, uh, you are feeling things that allow you to not see anything. You
Okay.
can't see. Boy, I should have seen a red flag there, right?
Okay.
You can't see it,
Yeah.
right? Why? Because the love drugs won't allow you to see it because
Okay.
you're in love, right? So after the love drugs wore off, and you get married, that's where the scale really matters. Because if I would have asked the question, as I being somebody,
Yeah.
if I would have asked the question, so what number is this person on? Are they a 10? Are they an 8, a 9? What are they? Or are they 2? Right? Well, then I would have been actually aware. So I teach that childhood makes marriage.
Yeah.
Childhood makes marriage. Those 3 words don't even go together. In society, childhood makes marriage is not even a topic. Nobody's ever, they spell it out in 1,000 words, but they don't spell it out in 3 words.
Yeah.
Childhood makes
Yeah.
marriage. Why is that? Because whatever is in your subconscious is going to come into the marriage.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with that. But what I'm like, I guess my question is, if the advice that you would give someone before they're married is that if someone's verbally abusive to them, okay, red flag, find someone else. Then like, why does that change after they just signed a piece of paper that they're married now? Like and I'm again, this isn't like a criticism. I'm asking you, I'm trying to understand your perspective on it. What's different after they've gotten married versus the advice you would have given them beforehand?
So when you're in love, when all of those, the oxytocin, dopamine, when that does its work, you're literally building strands of love with each other, right? And those love strands are building stronger and stronger the longer you stay together. And there's some marriages I've talked to that don't have strands. They have no strands. They have 2 strands, physical attraction and some other thing, right? And so like in my book, I have a chapter called The Love Strands. And the love strands test, it's called, right? So this is 25 strands of love that you can actually know what they are, and you can test yourself on them and find out, gosh, am I really in love or not, right? But if you have these strands, now you're deeply involved, not just a piece of paper. You have love strands that connect you, right? Well, these love strands are now there, and since you have them, if you're a chaos kid, you don't have a value called commitment. You don't have a value called loyalty. You don't have a value called forgiveness. You don't have a value called kindness, right? You don't have those. You're a chaos kid. You don't know any of that, right? But let's say you married a purpose kid. The purpose kid has all those values. They have them all, and now they think, "Whoa, geez, how could you treat me like that? How could you possibly treat?" Right? And so marriage is just like when you're a high person on the scale marrying a low person on the scale, you're struggling. But I've seen people that love their chaos kid beyond all reason, way beyond any reason. Nobody could argue with it. They just love their chaos kid, and they can't explain it. And the world doesn't understand, but nobody understands because they love their chaos kid, and I know them. I've spent time with them.
Yeah,
right? They love their chaos kid, and so all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get them to learn when they're under pressure so they can start to change their mind.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that once they've reached that point, like it's not about the fact that they have this label of being married. It's about the fact that they've already have so much intertwined with each other that it's worth trying to figure it out as opposed to just breaking it off.
Yes. And so what I'm teaching is when you know that you love your chaos kid, you're going to stay and you're going to change yourself. And when you change yourself, you're going to move from fear, the ocean, to love, the beach. When you leave fear and move to love, you're making the change. And when you make that change, and it doesn't happen overnight, but when you make that change, you're different now. And you could be a chaos kid and make the change, leaving fear and moving to love. You could be a purpose kid, leaving fear and moving to love. Because people who are purpose kids don't come up with a package of like a fearless living. They're not trained for being married to a chaos kid. And I've said that a lot to purpose kids. I said, you've never been trained to marry a chaos kid. You're not equipped. You don't know how.
Yeah.
Right? So one of the things I'm teaching is called the care and feeding of a chaos kid. That's a phrase I use, the care and feeding of a chaos kid. Because I love my chaos kid. Now I need to care and feed my chaos kid.
Yeah.
And I use the analogy, is your chaos kid is like an exotic animal, a spider, an iguana, a snake, right? These when you want to keep these pets, you have to put them in really perfect conditions. Perfect temperature, perfect light, perfect food, right? All these things have to be ideal. Because if they're not ideal, they get sick and die. right?
Interesting.
Well,
Yeah.
but that's a good way to think about. I love and care for my chaos kids just like I love these pets.
So, okay, what if you have two people that get married that are 8, 9, or 10?
Okay, here's my difference. I've been teaching this course for 15 years.
Okay.
I've never had a 9 married to an 8, not once.
Really?
I've never had 10 married to a 9, not once. I've never had them. Why do I never have them? Because people who are raised in purpose have ways to solve problems. They have ways they're not bitter, they're not
Okay.
angry, they're not despondent, depressed. They don't have all that.
Mm-hmm.
They got resilience. They've got a liveliness about them, a sense of humor, a kindness, a warmth about them
Okay.
that they don't need my course, right?
Yeah.
Because chaos does terrible things to people.
Okay.
So who do I have? I have one or the other coming
Sure,
from
sure.
chaos
Okay, yeah,
every
yeah.
time.
But that's what I'm asking though, right? Because I feel like a lot of where these questions are coming from is like I actually have really strong opinions about marriage, and it
Okay.
comes from I got married when I was young, and I got divorced a couple years after that, and now
Okay.
I'm married again, and we've been married now for like 7 years, and we're super happy. And so I have a
Okay.
lot that I've learned and a lot of like perspective on it that I've solidified for myself. And like what, for example, one of the things you said is that like marriage is hard, and that there's all these things and these bad things that happen, and I've gotten to a point where I'm like, if you would have asked me a year after I got divorced the first time, I would totally agree. Yeah, marriage is so hard, like all these bad things, right? But then now being able to experience the marriage that I'm in now, I don't believe that marriage is hard. At least that it doesn't have to be, right? I don't believe that like marriage in itself for everyone should be hard.
Okay. So
Do I
so
think that
so
that's possible? Yeah, absolutely. Just like you're describing, right? You've been doing this for 15 years. You know that for a lot of people, marriage is hard. But I also
but
don't feel
no,
like it has to be that way.
this is a second marriage story. You're telling a second marriage story.
Okay.
What's the second marriage story? I got the right person. That's the story you're telling.
Okay.
You're telling the story. I got the right person, right? So
Well,
what
I
do
don't
I
know if I
do?
agree that I would say that, but that's fine.
Right? But
Go
if you
explain.
got the right, if I got the right person, that means the second time is the charm, or the third time is the charm,
Okay.
right? So what really makes the marriage fall apart? Well, it's called a bucker. Do you know
A
what a
what?
bucker is? A bucker, Bucker.
Bucker? No, I
A
don't know.
bucker. You never heard that term, right?
No, I haven't.
Right. What is a bucker? A bucker is coming from the word bucking bronco, right?
Okay.
A horse
Hmm.
that throws off the rider.
Okay.
But you have to know this. If this is your second marriage, you have to know this, right? What is a bucker? A bucker is a person who was raised in a very difficult place on the bottom of the scale. And so what they do is they live like buckers do. And I've interviewed a lot of buckers, and so I know this. Buckers go through a 3-step process. And the reason they go through a 3-step process is in life, just daily life, a message comes from the subconscious that says, do this. And this is a terrible thing. Okay.
Okay.
What the bucker does is go, stop, I'm not doing that. And they do a second step. I'm doing this instead. They choose a value they don't even own, a value that they're borrowing from somebody else. And they
Okay.
say, I'm doing this instead. And the third step is they act out that value and they behave in a really good way. The bucker goes through 1, 2, 3. 1, stop, I'm not doing it. 2, I'm doing this instead. 3, and they act it out. They borrow a value and act it out. Now that's a bucker. Now, if you were married to a bucker, you would not know it. You would not know it. You know why you would know? Because a bucker never shares to you their struggle. They never tell you their struggle. Their struggle is, I'm a bucker and I am suffering because I get these messages from my subconscious I hate. And I don't want to do that. I'm never going to do that. I'm not completely against it. I'm not going to do part of that, right? And so they fight it. Buck 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times a day. They do it over and over again. And what happens to a bucker? Well, you don't know this because you don't know about buckers, but what buckers do is they can't take it. They snap. Now, why
Okay.
do they snap? Because they're fighting their mind.
Okay.
They're fighting their mind. And so what they're fighting their mind with their willpower. Do you think they're going to last?
No, of
Well,
course
they
not.
don't. They don't last. So you're in your second marriage and you don't know because you didn't actually do this. You didn't know if you married a bucker.
Okay.
Because if you marry a bucker, you're marrying a chaos kid who's fighting to stay alive.
Okay.
And that is a very big job. And if you did marry a bucker, you want to start to find out slowly if you married a bucker. Because that second marriage is going to collapse if you're married to a bucker, because buckers can't survive more than 27 years. And you think, hey, that's a really good time for me. 27 years is really good for me. But that's the longest they've ever lasted. I've never seen them last that long. They snap. And so what the reason I wrote this book, this is not the woman I married.
Yeah.
That's a statement from these people.
Yeah.
These people married buckers.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah.
And all happened to the buckers. They all collapsed.
Yeah.
And when they collapsed, that was a big deal. And what happens is the flood of the subconscious comes rushing to the top, and the personality changes.
Mm.
So whatever they loved before, they don't love now. Whatever they wanted before, they don't want now. It's all new. It's a whole new change.
Yeah.
So this is not the woman I married.
Yeah.
Like, big surprise.
Yeah.
I married a bucker.
So what I wanted to share, just because I don't want you, like, I'm not trying to just be, like butt heads with you just because I disagree, but I think it's important to share each other's perspectives. So for me,
you're very open-minded.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, of course. I mean, I wouldn't be here if I didn't want to hear what other people had to think. So the reason why, when you said, well, so you found the right person, the reason why I say I disagree with that is because I don't believe that I found the right person. I believe that I became the right person. Okay. And therefore I am where I am now. That being said, I mean, and this is a conversation I've had with my wife, so this isn't like I'm like hiding it. Like, we have had this conversation before and I've said it to her, and I think she feels the same way about herself as well. And it kind of goes in line with what you're saying. But what I've said to her is that, like, we don't believe in this idea of like the one, like, so this person is the one. And the reason is because I believe I'd be happy regardless of who I was married to. That being said, I also, at this point, don't believe I would marry the same person that I did in the past that I didn't have a great relationship with. And again, I'm not sitting here to say like you're wrong or your perspective's wrong or anything. But I do think it's important to hear different people's perspectives. And I'm sure that somebody listening is also going to resonate with what you're saying. And I feel like if that's the route they want to go, they absolutely should be reading your book and learning from you. And the title of your book is this isn't the woman I married.
This is not the woman I married.
Okay, gotcha. And is it available on Amazon?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, no, look, Larry,
you're saying something important. You said
sure.
I changed. You said I changed.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Why I can be married to this girl because I changed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're kind of proud of that.
Oh, 100%. And this is why I say I feel like it's kind of in line with what you were saying before. I do believe that we're on a similar page, but what I'm also saying is that my standards are different as well, right? Mm-hmm. So just because I could be married to anyone and be happy doesn't mean I would be married to anyone and choose that and to be happy in that situation. For me, knowing what I know now, I could be happy, but I would also just choose, okay, this person is not the right person for me and I'm going to talk to someone else. But even still, like I said, I became the right person that I feel like I could be happy regardless. Would I choose that though? And this is my thing. I love to learn. Like, it's literally plastered everywhere. If you look on my social media, it says life is about learning. It's like, I talk about it all the time. I love to learn. I'm always reading. I'm always ingesting information. It's the thing I love to do, but I'm not going to like put up with a situation that's super painful for the sake of learning. I feel like I could be proactive and learn and like read and do all these things and maybe set a challenge for myself. Something that, see, this is how I feel like when I look at like relationships, right? Like my marriage. Okay. For me, there's like a baseline, right? There's a baseline of, okay, this is good, right? Like this is where I'm living and it's good. And I can experience pain voluntarily by setting big goals for myself, trying to accomplish things and inevitably falling short of those things, right? And I go, okay, I'm learning, right? I'm trying to figure out how to get where I'm going. And again, this isn't to be combative. I just think about like my perspective is that like I agree in the sense that yes, it is when things don't go your way that you are able to learn, right? That's like the definition of it. So yes, that's true, but I don't believe that it has to be all the way on like this end of the spectrum where it's like, oh, like I'm willing to put up with this area of my life being terrible in order to learn. I believe that we can get to a point where it's good and then purposely force ourselves to do it. It reminds me actually of people who go to the gym, right? Like I think about somebody who has a physical job because they have no choice and they're in shape versus a person who goes, I sit at a desk all day long, but I want to be in shape. So I'm going to put myself in a position where it's hard, right? I'm going to put myself in the gym and I'm going to work hard. And that's how my muscles will grow. I'm not doing it because I have to because of my job or because I'm a slave labor or something like that, right? So yeah, that's all. I'm just sharing my perspective on that.
What makes you unusual is because you're a learner by choice. There are not a lot of learners by choice.
I won't disagree with you there.
Well, there really are. Most people don't want to learn by choice.
Sure.
They want to learn by the situation.
So
what
they learn because they're forced to learn.
But you love learning. You love the role of learning.
Yeah.
And you pursue it.
Yeah.
And so the idea of being in a place where you're like, I don't know why I got married, but boy, this is hell. I don't like it here. Right.
Yeah.
I guess I'll learn here. Right. You would not do that. You would not even see yourself that way.
Yeah, it's a good point. This is why I say that there's inevitable that there's some people listening here and be like, Juliano, that makes sense. And there's other people who are going to be listening and be like, Larry, that makes sense. And I love it. Those people listening absolutely should be going and reading your book and connecting with you. I love it. And see, this is part of the reason also, just as to kind of like take a step back and kind of like a meta view of this. This is part of the reason why I do this podcast is because I think it's important for people to understand that like you can have conversations with people and disagree and still be smiling at the end of it. Right. And it's okay because everyone has a different perspective. Everyone has a different experience. And there really isn't such thing as this is the right way to do it or this is the wrong way to do it. Ultimately, we're all different. Right. And we have to figure out what works for us. And we're all also on our own journey trying to figure it all out. And so I think it's really cool. I think it's really cool. Larry, I really appreciate you coming on. Like you said, if anyone wants to buy your book, This Is Not the Woman I Married, it's available on Amazon. They can find it there. Is there any way else that people can connect with you that you want to share?
They can go to You Can Save This Marriage, and they can go to...
Is that youcansavethis.marriage.com?
Yeah, youcansavethis.marriage.com.
Okay.
And they can go to LarryBilotta.com, and they can go to YouTube, the Larry Bilotta channel, and they can get a lot of videos there.
Awesome. All right, Larry. Well, like I said, I really enjoyed having you on. I'm glad we were able to have this conversation, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
I like your format. Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good one.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who'd appreciate it. For everything I have to offer, visit howtobeaperson.co.